All right, today we have a very special celebration. We're celebrating your son, Christian's adoption and the kind of a end of that adoption process. And of course, not the end of the process because you're going to continue to parent him and all that stuff. But I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to celebrate together as a church family. And when you brought this, I thought, you know what, we got to do a video. We got to share it with our whole church family and kind of let us into your story, your journey, and what God's done through this process. And so I guess one cliche question to start with would be, how did God place adoption on your hearts? Because this isn't an easy decision. I'm sure it was a big decision for your family. Mm-hmm. So how did God place this on your heart?
I'd say it's a long story, but we'll try and keep it fairly short. I would say it probably didn't start with adoption. So years and years ago, when we were having our biological children, my sister and I would kind of chat about kind of our families and the unfolding of our families and having kids and that sort of thing. And we started to actually tuck away all our favorite clothes and like put them in and tuck them away in her crawl space. And it was kind of a weird line that we would say is, maybe one day God will add to our family in a different way, and we kind of snuck them away and tucked them away.
Is that like what I do with tools when I buy them? I just sort of put them away. Just
sneak them away, tuck them away in case you might need them one day.
In case I might need them.
So we kind of actually had a pretty decent stockpile in her crawl space, and it was probably 8 or 9 years ago that a friend of ours from church came and shared with us that desperate need for foster parents in the Lower Mainland, and specifically Surrey was the area that she had statistics for. Like, this is how many babies, this is how many kids right now need foster homes, and it actually was shocking and really hard to hear. And we started praying about it. So that was kind of the foster care side of things. And actually, the truth is, at that time, we actually said no. And we didn't feel like we were being called to do it. And we also maybe didn't feel like we had the capacity, which I think is a pretty normal maybe process to sort through. But when I shared that with my sister, they actually started praying through it and talking through it together, her and her husband. And they started the foster care process. So it is quite a process. It took them probably a year and a half to do the home study and the paperwork and everything to apply to be foster parents. And we said we would partner with them by helping them and doing relief care. So we would take their little ones that got placed with them, and we would do kind of an overnight once a month, or just kind of support them and in whatever practical ways that we could. And yeah, we did that for about probably a year and a half. And it was hard. We said goodbye actually to quite a few little kiddos, and we're part of that process. And our kids kind of joined us in that process, started loving these little kind of foster cousins that they were loving on and enjoying with us. And probably about a year in, we started having some more conversations about our capacity, and just I think started feeling more and more called. And there were conversations, there were lots of conversations, because it wasn't an easy or there was a little bit maybe more convincing on my side to warming up to the idea, talking about it. Like, Jason is more of a think through process, like, what about in 20 years? And I was like, we could do it. We love well, we have the capacity, we have the space, we could do it. And so those were kind of early conversations around the starting point, which for us was foster care.
Yeah, and I came around, just so you know. And I love it, and certainly the whole process, even getting ready for it, was a really, really big learning thing. But I really enjoyed it, and certainly enjoyed Christian being placed in our home. And we, from the get-go, at least for the first couple of years of fostering, that's where we put our heart. We wanted to be a home, a family that is a safe place for kids who need a place to land. We were thinking younger kids, but we were open to whatever. So Christian arrived, and the years went on.
Wait, was Christian your first?
Yes, first and only.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. And as the years went on, the conversations with the ministry and with Christian's biological mom we started having them, and then it sort of unfolded that the opportunity to adopt would be a realistic thing. And so then we had to go back to the prayer drawing board and really think this through. Is this we thought this, but now we got this. And then, of course, we had to, the rest of our kids to talk this through and pray this through. And yeah.
And it was sort of a no-brainer, but also a decision. And we wanted to be really intentional about praying through. Like, God had placed this child into our home. We adored him from the minute. He was 16 months old when he came into our home, and we fell in love with him instantly. And our kids jumped in with 2 feet. They were rolling around on the ground, loving on him, playing with him, enjoying him. But all of a sudden there's the reality of permanence. And there were moments where we went, wow, one, we're old. No, that's what you process, like, okay, this is a new, whoa, okay. We started to think about, and then we had to go back to, God has placed this child in our home. And it almost was, there wasn't, even in some ways wasn't a question. If God has asked us to care for this child, we have to trust that he also is going to provide financially, he's going to provide capacity, he's going to provide the sleep we need, or whatever, all the things, like just as in parenting.
The youthfulness that you guys,
right? Like,
and you guys got it.
We pretend it like keeps us young. That's what we tell ourselves sometimes on the, whatever.
Keeps us young, but makes us feel old.
Yeah, both at the same time.
Christian's obviously a beautiful boy, right? And very close with our son, Nathan, as well. So I love watching them together and having them over at our house. And recently, our son's been crashing your place a lot, hanging out with Christian.
It.
And I think it's wonderful that you guys have provided such a safe and beautiful home. And not a perfect home, just like the rest of our homes in our church families, but a wonderful home. But I know that, your biological children, Micah, Lucas, Janaea, they had a big part in this process, in this decision. Can you kind of walk us through what it was like for them and how this has impacted them in the last several years here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we've involved them the whole way through, from before, even pre-foster, taking care of other kids, like Julie had mentioned. But even when we started thinking about even the possibility of us doing it, we would sit down with our kids and think, what do you think about this? Now, this was 5 years ago, so our kids were... Even
more, because when we started, it was like 8 or 9 years ago. So,
right.
Our kids were...
So our, Janaea and Lucas were quite young, really, and they kind of treated, this sounds really bad, but a little baby in your home, that's kind of like a little puppy, and this is really exciting, and why wouldn't we want a little puppy, right? Micah probably had the most questions to ask. He was probably the one that kind of pushed a little bit and went, really? And he kind of got it at an early age, but once he understood that this was a love thing, a gospel thing, this is how God shows, this is how God wants us to love people in its very basic form, caring for the widows and orphans. He understood. And as we all got older, as we all followed the process, I think we all were pretty convinced that this was a very tangible way to love people, to care for people, and not just Christian himself, but Christian's family, and reaching into their lives, and just all of the relationships we've made. So it's been a process that we all have walked through intentionally, and I don't think it's the end of it. I think we've all had our struggles along the way, how kids feel when other people come into your lives, and is it fair, is it whatever? But I really think it's been amazing for our kids, really amazing for our kids.
It's very much been a full family way that we can tangibly serve and love together. And that actually was how it started. I think I hit a point where the age that our kids were at, I could see that God was expanding my capacity, right? Like there's something on the horizon. Either am I going to work more? What am I going to look at or do? And God kept placing this idea that it's something that our whole family could learn through and grow through and love through. And it really has been that, probably, like I would say, every step of the way, from, when our preteens were starting to just take a step back and maybe be in their rooms a little bit more or whatever. I call it, like, it brought us back to the carpet. We then were playing and together, and it brought us a common way to love and serve God and just be a family. And what it has taught us and what it has taught our kids is like, you almost can't describe it. But we've definitely, even when we talked about adoption again, and we realized the reality that we were going to have the opportunity to adopt, we really had to go back and say, this is your future. He becomes your forever brother. And even kind of looking long-term forward, when we're not around anymore, we'd have to take this on together, and we're all choosing and committing to this. And our kids were really, we wanted to do honor and justice to talking through it, but they were so on board and so committed to him and to this.
Even here, as we're setting up for this shoot, Janaea went on her bike to pick up Christian, and just to see them roll in, and it's just awesome to see that this is your family's commitment. And at our church, we talk about radical hospitality, meaningful connections. This is probably the most tangible form of that, to open up your home, to welcome a child into your family, literally, and adopt him just as our Father in heaven has adopted us into his family. And I think, obviously a huge undertaking for your family as a whole, like you said. But a beautiful expression of God's love. And not just to do it as, here's an expression of God's love, but obviously that permeates into your family too. God's love in being shown to Christian, but also being shown to you through this process as well. So absolutely. It's so beautiful. Thanks for allowing our church family kind of into your story a little bit. I'm sure after the service, a lot of people are going to want to talk to you more about your story and share how God's blessed you and how God's working through you in it. But as we close here, we're going to dedicate Christian this week, and that's wonderful that we get to do it. You guys have obviously taken this on, but we're so thankful that through you, Christian is now a part of our church family, and that we get to celebrate this together, and we get to come alongside your family, and not only your children and you guys, but all of us get to have a small part in helping raise Christian in the ways of the Lord. So I'm really excited about it personally, and I know Nathan is. But how can we be praying for you guys? You guys both said that this isn't the final step. You got a whole lifetime of parenting to do still. How can we be praying for your family?
Pray for families like you would pray for any family. That wisdom and love and understanding, that we'd have that as we raise our kids, that our kids would continue to understand the greater calling, even when life gets a little bit frustrating or things become seemingly unfair. I think specifically for me, because this is a busy time with 4 kids and things everywhere, I have noticed the need for just a greater capacity for God to expand my capacity of love and care and presence and everything for my kids. Not just I want to be a better dad, but I want to be a more complete father. So that's a Holy Spirit thing, I believe. And but I think that He does that. Like I think that He surprises us with just the ability to give more, to sacrifice more than we ever thought. So that would be a great prayer, and really just for our kids' health and well-being and spiritual growth and relationships and all that stuff. We wouldn't do it without a community. Julie and I have talked about this.
That's such a
we wouldn't just be like
Yeah.
parents who just do this, who didn't have a church community, because we think that is one of the key areas where the support groups and the ministry, when we started this, talks about
They get it.
sure we
They
have
get this
support groups.
idea. What's your support
That's why
look
there's
like?
a lot of Christians in foster care
Well,
and
and I
adoption.
think God calls us to care, right? And care for widows and orphans. But I think Christians also have incredible communities of support around them. And they asked us that, what's your community look like? And we're like, it couldn't get better. It couldn't, right? Like we know that we parent, but we adopt parent, you know, in community. And for that reason that we can, that we can be stretched and we can tackle really challenging things. And I think for me, one of the prayers that I pray, that I covet others in our community to pray, is that just like the generational trauma in Christian's family, but also in so many families that are hurting, maybe in foster care, that are adopted, that would be broken, that the chain of the trauma, and that he would be set free from that, and that God would give us all that we need and all the people to surround us through any challenges that might be particular to coming from, you know, a challenging background and from having trauma. And we just, we just pray over him and ask that our community, you know, kind of join us as we pray for all our children and all those in our community. But just God would allow us to parent in a way that acknowledges those challenges, but also is ready to support kind of whatever kind of comes our way. Yeah.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Jace, for sharing your story. And our church will commit to praying with you in all of this.
Wonderful.
It's awesome.
Wonderful.
Thank you.